So we officially begin primary series with a standing posture, Utthita, Hasta, Padangusthasana, and it's a pretty difficult standing posture. So we're going to take it step by step, and I'm going to do it on the left side. So we're going to shift into the right foot, and before you even lift the leg up to go into the balance, just make sure you're connecting down into the foot. So pressing down through the four corners of the foot, lifting the arch, and I even like to micro bend the knee just a little bit. That makes me feel more stable than locking the knee joint out. And locking the knee joint out feels like I lose that connection into the foot, into that pressing down through the foot. So really find your stability through the right foot, right hand comes to your hip. And the elbow is back a little bit to just keep this nice and open. And then as you shift into the right foot, you begin to lift the left leg and find the center line and feel into it. Feel into that central orientation along the center line of the body. Instead of intellectualizing that concept of the center line, feel into it. How can you feel that center line from the heel, up through the leg, through the center of the pelvis, through the center of the heart, through the throat, and out through the crown of the head? Feel into that. Make that a somatic, physical experience. And then your first option is to just hold onto the knee. Second option is to hold on to the big toe. And if you have the big toe, you can start to play around with straightening the leg. Now, before we move on from here, I want to talk about the standing foot just a little bit more. So the toe is going to be pointing forward, but if that feels unnatural for you, it's probably because it is. Because the way that the femur bone is sitting in the hip is not to accommodate the toe pointing forward. So sometimes, and I think most times, it's more stable and more comfortable to turn the toes out a little bit, and that just feels more stable. It feels like, okay, yes, this is how the leg wants to be positioned, to have a really stable standing foot. Okay, so we're here, the leg is either bent, and if you're bending the knee, I would catch on the inside of the thigh. Instead of the outside, I like the inside, because then that allows you to get into the hip a little bit more, so you can even let that knee fall out to the side a little bit. And then as you straighten the leg, the knee points up. Good. And we're here. The next part is a forward fold. But before we do, let's stabilize here one more time. So we press through the foot, we reach up through the crown of the head, and we have an action counteraction here that's happening by pulling on the big toe. You're pulling the leg back into the hip socket at the same time as you reach forward through the base of the big toe. So pull the toe back and reach forward through the base of the big toe. And that opposition creates a really stable bind. And then from here, you just keep emphasizing those two actions as you forward fold. So pull the big toe to draw the leg back into the hip socket as you reach the heart forward and fold over the left leg. Good. And we're here for 5 breaths. And once you're there, you're continuing those actions of reaching the base of the big toe forward, drawing the big toe back to really feel like the leg is being pulled into the hip socket, and drawing the lower belly in to reach the heart forward. So it's the same thing that happens in a lot of the other postures. We just talked about this in Padangusthasana, where you pull the hip back and you reach the heart forward. And that opposition creates space to move into the posture, but also here it helps to create stability. It helps you to stay in the center instead of just dumping the weight forward and falling out of the center and falling forward. You kind of stay in the center by pulling the hip back and reaching the heart forward. Oh, I'm a little bit wobbly, but it's okay though. And it keeps you oriented around the center line. You're here for 5 breaths. Inhale, come back up, and take your time with these transitions. Because if you're moving really fast and you're not aware of those in-between moments, and it's important to be aware of these in-between moments so that you can maintain your orientation around the center line. So you're here, and then we're going to bring the leg out to the side. So as you do that, you need to shift a little bit over to the side. so that you can counteract the weight of the left leg. So you don't stay exactly where you are when the leg is straight. You have to shift a little bit this way so that you can support the weight of the leg on the side. It's really, really subtle. And then once you're here, you're rolling this hip back and down. So it feels like you bring the heel forward. So the two hips are in line with each other. It's common to kind of do something like this, where you lift that left hip up, but drop it down, and it feels like you're rolling this thigh back and down to reach the heel forward. And then this is difficult. You need a lot of flexibility for this. So maybe you're not coming all the way to the side. Maybe you're coming here to maintain that even pelvis. Or maybe you're bending the knee a little bit. And then the final piece to this is to look over the right shoulder, which challenges the balance a little bit. Inhale, you're here for 5 breaths. Inhale, we bring it back to the center. Exhale, we fold forward for just 1 breath. Inhale, come back up, both hands to your hips, and we hold it here for 5 breaths. And same thing, you feel like you're drawing this leg back into the hip so that the shoulders come over the hips, and you're not doing something like this, where you're leaning back, which it may be really tempting. It might feel like this is actually easier. At first, this is harder, but it's more sustainable because you're using the strength of the core to help keep the leg lifted. Shoulders over your hips, ears over your shoulders, root down through that bottom heel, reach up through the crown of the head for 5 breaths. Exhale, come down. Good. And you shake it out. And like right now, I really feel like these muscles were working on the sides of the glutes. So, and that reminds me of something really important is when you have this leg up, make sure you're not sinking into the hip, right? Where you're just kind of like leaning into the joint, which can be really tempting, especially if you're hypermobile. So you really want to avoid that by rooting down through the foot and feeling like this lifting up and out of the pelvis. So it's like samasthitihi on one side, right? You're pressing through the foot, you're dropping the tailbone, you're drawing the lower belly in, and you're using all of those downward moving actions to help you feel like you're lifting up. And you feel like that lightness, right? So you have those opposite directions moving so that you can find yourself somewhere in the middle. It's just like samasthitihi, just a little bit more complex, and you're doing some stuff on this side, but this side stays stable and it stays balanced, pressing down, reaching up, and you stay connected to the center line. All right, balance is difficult, and it's this constant movement in and out of balance. So, and I think this posture is really important for me to kind of like be okay with not ever finding balance 100% forever and ever all the time. It's like, oh, I found balance and now I'm just going to be here forever. And like, that's never going to be true. No matter like how advanced we become in the practice, balance is this place where we come in and out of constantly. And it's just our ability to notice when we're out of a balance and what actions need to happen, what mindful action needs to happen to come back to that place of balance, that place where we feel grounded and supported from the earth, but also like we can lift up and open from that place of stability. Yeah? So we're just coming in and out, and we know when we're not, and we know when we are, and yeah, and it's just a fun process. And this posture will really put you face to face with that process, and that like being okay with just constantly coming in and out of it. This posture, I've been practicing it for like, I don't know, so many years at this point, like 10 years, and I still have moments where I'm like in it, out of it, in it, out of it, and like that process is super interesting, and there's so much to learn in that process. All right.